This is my second month in ancient times. I've been quite lucky, transmigrating into the daughter of the current prime minister. I'm beautiful and poised, with no worries about food or clothing, and a whole group of people to serve me. If nothing unexpected happens, I'll be a typical noblewoman of this feudal era, relying on my father at home, my husband after marriage, and my son in old age. Of course, I don't mind living like this. Unlike those ambitious, transmigrated women, I have no grand aspirations. Pursuing true love, starting a farm, improving women's social status? Sorry, I'm not interested. Going with the flow is the key to a long life. However, today, I received an imperial decree from the palace, bestowing a marriage between me and Prince Mu, Xiaoyi. My prime minister father explained to me, Prince Mu is the only non-royal prince in the current dynasty. He has been loyal to the emperor since he was a prince, following him through thick and thin. During the battle for the throne, it was thanks to him that the emperor was able to overcome all obstacles and ascend to the throne. When I heard the eunuch announce the decree, my heart skipped a beat. As a sheltered noble daughter who rarely left the house, people called me Miss. My parents called me by my nickname, and occasional visitors referred to me as Lady. So until today, I didn't know my full name was Qiu Qingjia. Xiao Yi and Qiu Qingjia. Aren't these the names of the female lead and the second female lead in a tragic romance novel I once read? This novel was very popular back then. It told the story of a strong and resourceful female lead who disguised herself as a man, stayed by the male lead's side, helped him ascend to the throne, and developed an epic romance with him. In the end, just as the male and female leads overcame all obstacles to share the great kingdom, the evil second female lead poisoned the female lead. She was then killed by the male lead and her body was desecrated, her entire family executed. It was as tragic as could be. The male lead of that novel is the current emperor, the female lead is Prince Mu Xiaoyi, and the evil second female lead is naturally me, Qiu Qingjia. At first, I comforted myself, thinking it was just a coincidence. But after my father explained everything, my face turned pale. My mother tried to console me. Jiar, don't worry. Although Prince Mu is 27, she looks very young and is one of the most handsome men in the capital. Whether he's handsome or not doesn't matter. I could live with a woman pretending to be my husband for a lifetime. But in the novel, later Xiao Yi revealed her female identity and Qiu Qingjia, the future Princess Mu, became the laughingstock of the entire capital. Then she turned evil, caused all sorts of trouble, tried to ruin the male and female lead's relationship, and eventually got herself killed, dragging her entire family down with her. I rubbed my forehead in exhaustion. That ending is too tragic. However, fortunately, this is just the beginning. I haven't made any big mistakes yet. As long as I cling tightly to my sister Zhao's thigh and stay under her protagonist aura, my ending will definitely change. I pumped my fist to encourage myself. All transmigrated women are tough to beat. Hang in there. My mother asked, Jiar, are you too scared to speak? The first step to villain's self-rescue, become best friends with the female lead. After being conferred the title of prince, Xiao Yi lived a leisurely life, mainly spending her days in the palace chatting with the emperor. Of course, as the main couple, how else would they deepen their feelings if they weren't constantly sticking together? I stopped Xiao Yi on her way to the palace. This was also my first time meeting Xiao Yi. How should I put it? This girl looked quite rugged. If no one told me she was a woman, I would absolutely think she was a man. She had thick eyebrows and starry eyes, an imposing demeanor, and the only feminine trait was her fair skin. I thought it would be like in TV dramas, where the woman ties her hair in a ponytail and wears men's clothing, but everyone around her insists she's a man. Reality is reality, and art is always dramatized. I stared at Xiao Yi for 3 seconds, thinking, with looks like that, no wonder no one realizes she's a woman in disguise. Under these circumstances, the emperor fell in love with her. The emperor's sexual orientation is really worth considering. Miss Jiu. Xiao Yi paused and quickly recognized me. I didn't know she knew me. Seeing my puzzled expression, she added, I have seen your portrait. Her voice was a pleasant low tone, with no hint of femininity. It must have been altered with medicine. Thinking this, I felt a bit sympathetic towards her. I said, "Your Highness, I made some pastries and brought them for you." My maid, Miao Hong, smartly handed over the food box. Xiao Yi raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You came specifically to bring me food?" I nodded, looking at her sincerely. "From now on, we are family. I will care for you and look after you so you never have to live behind a mask again." Xiao Yi visibly shuddered twice. "Miss Jiu, aren't you being a bit overly enthusiastic?" It's understandable. She thought I didn't know she was a woman. Naturally, a woman showing affection towards her made her uncomfortable. I smiled sweetly. "Don't be so distant. Call me Jar. Can I call you Xiao Yi?" "Xiao Yi. As you wish." I continued. "I'll bring you pastries every day from now on. These are all made by me, and you won't find them anywhere else." Xiao Yi instinctively wanted to refuse, but when I opened the food box, her eyes lit up. I had done my research and knew Xiao Yi loved sweets. After all, few girls don't like sweet things. These pastries combined the best of ancient and modern flavors. How could Xiao Yi resist? Sure enough, her face almost said, "Wow, these pastries look so exquisite and delicious." She glanced at me, a bit embarrassed. "Then I'll trouble you, Miss Jiu. But you can deliver them to the prince's residence. The palace is a bit far from your home." "It's no trouble," I said. "I want to see you." The two attendants behind Xiao Yi couldn't help but cover their mouths and laugh. Actually, I had another motive for delivering to the palace gates. Compared to the female lead, the male lead, the emperor, has a bigger influence. If one day Xiao Yi lowers her guard and brings me into the palace, I can cling to both the male and female leads, ensuring a worry-free future for the rest of my life. From then on, I made a box of pastries every day and waited for Xiao Yi at the palace gates. Rain or shine, I stood my ground like a rock. After a month of this, Xiao Yi started feeling guilty. "From now on, just come into the palace and wait for me. I'll notify them inside," she said, unfastening a green jade pendant from her waist and handing it to me. "This is my token. With it, no one in the palace will dare trouble you." I was so touched I could cry. "Sister Xiao, you're too kind." Seeing my sincere expression, Xiao Yi softened her voice, gently patted my head, and smiled warmly. "Silly girl, you're too easily moved." Wow. Her sexy low voice paired with such a gentle action was truly alluring. My heart uncontrollably skipped a beat. Indeed, charm knows no gender, especially for someone like me who loves good looks. The next day, I waited for Xiao Yi inside the palace walls. Though technically in the palace, it was the outer palace, much like the outer courtyard of a large household, where I saw officials waiting to meet the emperor, as well as eunuchs and palace maids. Seeing my excitement, Xiao Yi kindly led me into the inner palace. And so, I met the Supreme Emperor himself. Compared to Xiao Yi, the emperor's features were softer, his figure more slender, and his appearance delicate, like a refined scholar. Suddenly, I understood why he liked a woman like Xiao Yi. Their looks were quite complimentary. The emperor had already heard about me bringing pastries to Xiao Yi at the palace gates. Seeing me, he teased Xiao Yi with a smile. Yi, I found you a good princess consort." Xiao Yi, accustomed to the emperor's casual manner, replied, "What nonsense are you talking about? The girl is shy." The emperor, looking serious, said, "If she's bringing you pastries every day, she's not that shy." I was shocked. Why did the emperor sound jealous? I'm a woman. Is it not allowed for a woman to approach Xiao Yi? The emperor seemed a bit overbearing. I sneaked a glance at Xiao Yi. Her expression was calm, and she said nonchalantly, "Didn't you also bring me pastries every day before? If the king does so, why not the subject?" The emperor burst into hearty laughter, but I was a bit puzzled. This conversation felt so awkward. Later, Xiao Yi explained to me, the emperor's mother had a low status, and he walked on thin ice growing up in the palace. To him, I'm not just a subject but a friend, a brother, and a father figure. He's very dependent on me. Now that he's married the empress and taken in many concubines, he's not as reliant on me as before, though he occasionally acts out. TSK, the emperor is quite a player, marrying one after another. I noticed a hint of sadness in Xiao Yi's expression. Gently holding her pinky, I shook it and said, "It's okay. You have me. If you want, I can even find a few. Pretty boys, fresh young faces. We can enjoy them together, sister." Xiao Yi fell silent. She shook off my hand. "Qiu Qingjia, what on earth is in your head?" This was the first time she called me by my full name. Before, I asked her to call me Jiar, but she found it too intimate and refused. Now, calling me by my full name meant she considered me a close friend. This was a huge step forward. I cheerfully smiled at her. "My head is filled with thoughts of you." The second step to villain self-rescue. Accidentally, discover the female lead's secret, connect with her, and keep her secret. Xiao Yi's secret, of course, was her being a woman. How could I accidentally and naturally discover the secret? I came up with a good idea. I sneaked into the Mu Wang Manor, though it wasn't really sneaking. Some of the guards there recognized me, and I told them I wanted to surprise the prince, asking them not to make a fuss. Then I hid in Xiao Yi's bathhouse. My plan was to surprise her when she was undressing for her bath and accidentally discover her secret in the process. In the evening, Xiao Yi returned. I hid behind a screen, listening to the sound of water splashing and clothes rustling. Peeking out from behind the screen, I found the steam was quite thick. I could barely see Xiao Yi's long arms resting on the edge of the tub. Was her body hair a bit too thick? I squinted at her chest but couldn't see much. The tub was quite high. I leaned forward harder, and with a plop, I knocked over the screen and fell to the ground with it. "Who's there?" I heard the sound of a sword being drawn and quickly scrambled up from the floor. It's me, Xiao Yi, it's me, Qiu Qingjia, your beloved fiancé." Xiao Yi moved quickly, not only drawing her sword but also draping a robe over herself. I didn't get to see anything. Her hair, however, was not tied up, hanging loosely over her shoulders. In TV dramas, the female characters disguised as men usually let their hair down to reveal their true identity. I stared hard at Xiao Yi for 3 seconds, but unfortunately, even with her hair down, she didn't look like a woman at all. If I acted surprised now, it wouldn't be convincing. "What are you doing here?" she asked, both amused and annoyed. I stammered, unable to come up with anything. I had been too hasty, assuming I would easily discover her female identity without any backup plan. "You're not here to ogle my beauty while I bathe, are you?" I clasped my hands together. "Yes, exactly that." Xiao Yi was stunned. She had been joking, but I took her words seriously and admitted it. "Well, I've seen what I came to see, so I won't bother you anymore. Bye-bye." I tried to slip away, but Xiao Yi grabbed my arm and pinned me against the wall. "You think you can just leave after spying on me? What do you take me for?" Wow, it was the legendary Kabadan. At this moment, I deeply regretted that Xiao Yi wasn't a man. Even though she wasn't a man biologically, her face was more handsome than any man's. My cheeks flushed as I basked in the moment, shyly saying, "Oh, stop it. Do whatever you want to do." Xiao Yi was speechless. I reached out to undo her belt. "Don't be shy, come on." Xiao Yi suddenly backed away, fleeing in panic. I laughed out loud. I knew it. As a woman, she would definitely be scared off by my actions. The next day, I nonchalantly continued to bring her pastries, though she seemed a bit uneasy. Xiao Yi had a toothache, and the imperial physician said it was due to eating too many sweets. She told me not to bring her any more desserts. I thought about making soup instead, but she said, "If you want to see me, just come to the manor directly. You don't have to bring anything." After saying that, her expression changed, probably remembering how I had sneaked into the manor to spy on her bathing without notifying her. Afraid she might change her mind, I quickly put on a grateful expression, as if saying, "Sister Xiao, you are so considerate," and she didn't say anything more. When Xiao Yi went to the palace, it was usually for nothing serious. Ever since I started bothering her, she stopped going to the palace as often when she had no business there. I thought she probably didn't want to see the emperor flirting with other women. However, if the male and female leads didn't interact, how would the story progress? Would the male lead take out his frustration on me and force me out of the plot? As the female lead's best friend, I felt I should play the role of an assistant. So, on one occasion when I accompanied Xiao Yi to the palace, I suggested to the emperor that he go incognito to observe the people's lives. The emperor happily agreed, but suggested going to a brothel. Xiao Yi's face darkened, and she said, "Your Majesty, with your noble status, how can you go to such a mixed place?" Initially, I didn't agree either, but then I remembered that in many melodramatic novels, brothels were often places where the plot progressed and the relationship between the leads deepened. I said, "Your Highness, you may not know this, but brothels are the most information-rich places in the world. The Emperor's choice is truly wise." Xiao Yi looked at me in surprise, as I had always been her loyal fan, only cheering for her. The Emperor was pleased with my ability to adapt to the situation. We dressed in men's clothes, and with a few guards secretly protecting the Emperor, the three of us went to the largest brothel in the capital, Tianxiang Pavilion. The Madam of Tianxiang Pavilion, Mother Shui, took one look at us and saw through my disguise as a woman. However, she didn't expose me. Who knows? Maybe she thought I had a special preference. We requested a private room and a table full of good food, and Mother Shui called in the most popular girls from the pavilion. The Emperor, with a girl on each arm, effortlessly whispered sweet nothings, making the girls swoon. Xiao Yi, however, just sat there drinking, one cup after another. Her sharp features made her look a bit cold and unapproachable when she didn't smile. The girls, sensing this, crowded around the Emperor instead. I cleared my throat. "Don't just serve that gentleman. We are also guests." The girls laughed, and one of them said, "Little girl, what's the fun in women being with women?" The Emperor pointed at Xiao Yi. "This gentleman here is a man but doesn't like women. He's pure and untainted. Anyone who can sleep with him will be handsomely rewarded." As he spoke, he slapped a stack of silver notes on the table, and the girls' eyes lit up, eagerly clinging to Xiao Yi. The Emperor watched with a smile, but his eyes lacked true joy. I somewhat understood the Emperor's feelings. He liked Xiao Yi but was conflicted by her male identity. Even though he married one woman after another, he couldn't forget Xiao Yi. The problem was that Xiao Yi didn't like women, which annoyed him. If Xiao Yi were a playboy, he probably wouldn't find it so hard to let go. That's how it's written in romance novels. Xiao Yi remained seated, but her expression cracked, looking like she had eaten something unpleasant. As the female lead's best friend, I couldn't just watch her reveal her female identity in such a situation. "What's going on?" I stood up and kicked the girls clinging to Xiao Yi away, protecting her like a mother hen. "She's mine. You can't touch her." The girls were not pleased. "Oh, a couple, huh? Then why come to a brothel?" I snorted. "Because we want to." Turning back, I saw Xiao Yi looking at me with a warm and captivating smile. I could hardly handle it. Such a pity she's a woman. The girls returned to serving the Emperor, who, despite his bold words, didn't make any real moves. Half an hour later, the Emperor was so drunk that he slumped over the table, fast asleep. Xiao Yi dismissed the girls and then took off her outer robe to cover the Emperor. The Emperor, half-conscious, mumbled, "Ae, ae." I sneaked a glance at Xiao Yi, whose expression was unreadable. She sighed softly. Cautiously, I said, "Actually, you're a prince, and the Emperor is the son of heaven. You both stand at the pinnacle of power. Even if there's nothing to fear, who in the world would dare say anything?" Xiao Yi said, "What nonsense are you talking about?" I lowered my voice and pressed on. "You could tell the Emperor that you are a woman." The Emperor suddenly sat up, looking thrilled. "Ae, you're a woman?" Xiao Yi stared at me in shock. "I'm a woman? Oh my god." The male lead discovered the female lead's true identity in such a manner. I truly am a divine assistant. Sincerely, I took Xiao Yi's hand. "I've known all along that you are a girl. Then I glanced at the emperor, who was so excited he seemed disoriented. Xiao Yi's reaction, however, was beyond my expectations. She almost ground her teeth as she said, "What about my face makes me look like a woman?" The emperor said, "It doesn't matter if your face doesn't look like it." Xiao Yi shouted at him, "We bathed together. Have you forgotten?" The emperor was taken aback, then hesitated and said, "Maybe you used some kind of trick." I could feel Xiao Yi's anger about to erupt. She ripped open her shirt with a whoosh, revealing a flat chest and chest hair. I gaped. She had chest hair. Years of disguising herself as a man must have disrupted her hormones. Xiao Yi glared at me. "What part of me looks like a woman?" My eyes welled up. "I never imagined you would bind your chest so tightly to disguise yourself." Xiao Yi roared, "Xiu Qingjia." It turned out that Xiao Yi was indeed a man, a genuine, bona fide man. Had I not realized in time, he might have even tried to take off his pants to prove it. I was baffled. Xiao Yi was supposed to be a woman, so how had he turned into a man? "You better give me a reasonable explanation," Xiao Yi said as he escorted me home. "Why did you think I was a woman?" I avoided him for several days, racking my brain at home. On the 6th day, inspiration struck me as I remembered something. The year I got into this novel was during the height of the Danmei BL craze. After finishing the novel, I got an itch to change the female lead Xiao Yi's gender to male and wrote a fanfic featuring a romantic relationship between the emperor and Xiao Yi. Naturally, with the gender change, the plot diverged significantly. But my enthusiasm was short-lived. I abandoned the story right after the part where the emperor, in love with Xiao Yi but constrained by their genders, petulantly arranged a marriage for him. Could it be that I hadn't crossed into the original novel, but into my own Danmei adaptation? Was I here to finish what I started? Xiao Yi came to find me again, still pressing on the same question. Why did I think he was a woman? Feeling guilty, I lied. "There was this one time. I saw you and the emperor being very intimate, so I thought you two were." Since the emperor is the son of heaven and has empresses and concubines who bore him princes, he couldn't be the woman. That left you as the only possibility. It was a flimsy excuse, but it sounded somewhat plausible. More importantly, the emperor did have some ambiguous feelings toward Xiao Yi, so Xiao Yi believed my explanation. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, he continued, "Even if you thought I was a woman, why be so nice to me? Especially since the emperor arranged a marriage between us. You were going to marry a woman, yet you came to please me every day. Are you mad?" His eyes widened in sudden realization. "Do you like women?" I shook my head vigorously. "I like men. I'm just pitying you." "Pitying me?" I found my stride and continued. "Think about it, a woman in her 20s, having to disguise herself as a man all these years, neither male nor female. Isn't that pitiable? Plus, I don't have high expectations for marriage. I have no particular lover, so being fake married to a woman, being true sisters, and enjoying life isn't so bad." Xiao Yi stared at me, astonished. "Qiu Qingjia, you really are an oddball with a unique way of thinking." He added angrily, "So your kindness wasn't because you liked me?" "Not exactly. Prince, you're handsome and extraordinary. Whether as a woman or a man, you're outstanding and hard not to like." Xiao Yi's expression softened. I added, "Friendship between women can be deeper than love or kinship." Xiao Yi's softened expression darkened once again. Although the emperor had arranged a marriage between me and Xiao Yi due to his own secretive inclinations, the actual wedding date had never been set. I had been extremely enthusiastic about Xiao Yi before, but after discovering he was a man, my attitude became distant. Although he was still one of the main characters, according to the Danmei novel I adapted back then, Qiu Qingjia wasn't a villain. Strictly speaking, the adapted novel had no villains and followed a light and sweet plot. Even though I had abandoned it, I had already envisioned the ending. Qiu Qingjia would marry Xiao Yi and become the esteemed Mu Wangfei. Xiao Yi and Qiu Qingjia had a pact. He would provide her with the highest honor and favor, while she would act as his shield. Thus, Qiu Qingjia lived the comfortable life she had always dreamed of, while Xiao Yi and the emperor, under her protection, enjoyed their scandalous happiness. Happy ending. So, Qiu Qingjia was just a tool. As long as I didn't do anything stupid or rebel, a lifetime of glory and wealth was guaranteed. I'm a lazy person, so it was better to just be a shield and not worry about pursuing affection with Xiao Yi. If I fell in love with him and he loved someone else, wouldn't that be tragic? It was best to honestly be a shield, safe and untroubled. Despite thinking this, I felt a faint sadness in my heart. I stopped seeking Xiao Yi, but he started visiting the Prime Minister's residence every few days. I said, "Stop coming to my house all the time. The emperor might get upset. You should spend more time with him in the palace." Xiao Yi asked, "Are you afraid the emperor will be unhappy if you don't visit me?" "That could be part of it." I nodded. "Haven't you noticed that the emperor has unusual feelings for you?" Xiao Yi was silent for a moment and then said, "The emperor is just momentarily confused." "Oh, so last time he said it was dependence, but now he has admitted it." It seems the emperor had confessed to him. I gave an ambiguous smile. Actually, relationships between men can be quite wonderful too. Xiao Yi's eye twitched. "Qiu Qingjia, let me tell you, this prince is not a donshu, a term for men who prefer other men." I smiled more ambiguously. I know. At first, you all say that." Xiao Yi was too angry to speak and left in a huff. Not long after, another imperial decree arrived, stating that Xiao Yi and I were to hold our wedding in 10 days. Both my parents were astonished. In ancient times, wedding dates were usually announced 6 months or even a year in advance to give both families ample time for preparations. With the emperor's decree, some speculated that Mu Wang had fallen out of favor and the emperor was deliberately humiliating him. Regardless of the emperor's intentions, the Mu Wang residence and the prime minister's residence began preparing for the wedding with great enthusiasm. With the tight timeline, the dowry and wedding gifts were all kept simple. Fortunately, the Mu Wang Fei's wedding attire and ceremonial robes were regulated and handled by the Ministry of Rites, so I didn't have to embroider them myself. However, the time was so short that the Ministry of Rites couldn't prepare the Mu Wang Fei's wedding gown in 10 days. The Minister of Rites personally came to the Prime Minister's residence to apologize, so on the wedding day, I ended up wearing an ordinary wedding gown from a common family. There was no shortage of gossip. All the way, people whispered, and even the sound of firecrackers couldn't drown it out. By nightfall, after all the ceremonies were completed and Xiao Yi had lifted the bridal veil, it was just the two of us left in the new room. I relaxed my rigid posture, grabbed a handful of red dates and walnuts from under the silk quilt, kicked off my shoes, and sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed. I asked, "Why did the emperor set such an urgent wedding date?" Xiao Yi seemed stunned by my series of actions, and after a while, he said, "I mentioned getting married to the emperor. Maybe I was too eager, and he got angry." I said, "Just try to soothe him." Xiao Yi sneered, "There's no need to soothe him. He'll have to accept the reality." He sounds so righteous now, but he'll have a chance to eat his words later. I smiled suggestively. "Do you want to go find the emperor later? If you leave the wedding night to him, he'll surely be moved to tears." I gave him a meaningful look and patted my chest. "Don't worry, I'll cover for you." Xiao Yi was speechless. I noticed the veins on his forehead throbbing. He said, "Qiu Qingjia, are you out of your mind? How many times do I have to tell you? I'm not a donshu, a term for men who prefer other men. I don't like men. I'm not going anywhere tonight." I was taken aback and tentatively asked, "Are you planning to have an heir for the Xiao family?" "It's not impossible, but I'm not mentally prepared yet." Xiao Yi exploded. I felt like the floor of the new room was going to be worn out by his pacing. "Qiu Qingjia," he roared, "you've married me, and you're not mentally prepared yet." He glared at me. "And you're still eating red dates? Don't you know that symbolizes early childbirth?" I stopped eating, awkwardly stuffing the dates back under the quilt. And he continued to yell, "I'll tell you one last time. I don't like men. I like women. I like you." If I hear anything like that from you again, I'll make sure you can't get out of bed for a month." I was stunned, my mouth hanging open. What? Xiao Yi likes me? Great, just great. I flopped onto the bed. The Emperor will never let me off. He'll make sure I'm done for. Xiao Yi chuckled at my reaction, walked over, and looked down at me from above. His voice softened. "Don't worry. The Emperor isn't a bad person, just occasionally a bit petty. Besides, I'm here to protect you. The Emperor isn't bad, but who can guarantee he won't turn dark?" After all, I managed to make one of the main characters straight. I suddenly sat up, glaring at Xiao Yi. "Why do you like me? Aren't you supposed to like the Emperor?" Xiao Yi asked, "Why should I like the Emperor?" "Because it was my adaptation." I stared at him for a while, then lay back down. "Forget it. Let's just go with the flow." My married life was fairly fulfilling. I had no major requirements for a spouse. As long as there was no domestic violence, everything else was negotiable. Especially with someone like Xiao Yi, who was exceptional, handsome, wealthy, and influential, and also treated me with kindness and tenderness. It was easy for someone like him to be liked by others, right? Besides, I had felt a bit moved even when I thought he was a woman. The Emperor still occasionally caused some trouble. For example, he would send two beauties as a gift to Xiao Yi, or keep Xiao Yi in the palace to serve him during an illness, not letting him return home for 10 days or half a month, or indirectly criticize me. All these were minor issues. Xiao Yi was right. The Emperor wasn't bad. I felt as long as I didn't flaunt my affection in front of him, he wasn't planning to turn dark for now. Later, I became pregnant and gave birth to Xiao Yi's legitimate eldest son. Then I gave birth to his legitimate second son and legitimate daughter. The Emperor finally settled down and stopped causing trouble. Later, Xiao Yi told me he had a heart-to-heart talk with the Emperor and addressed the Emperor's feelings for him. In the past, he had always avoided it, viewing the Emperor's feelings as dependency or control, so the Emperor was reluctant to give up. When he straightforwardly told the Emperor, "I know you have feelings for me, but I don't like men. I only like Qiu Qingjia," the Emperor finally gave up. Perhaps he didn't really want anything more, just wanted Xiao Yi to acknowledge and remember that a man had loved him. The Emperor was tired too, and went back to loving his Empress and consorts. With both male leads living happily ever after, I think I've managed to fill in the plot hole, haven't I?